Okay, students, I will share the link for attendance. Okay, students, the scan for attendance is there, so you can scan your attendance now. If you have any problem, then I can help you after the class. Okay, students, I think that's enough. So, um, you can ask for my help if you have any problem on scanning this attendance, yeah, after the class. Okay, students, today we are going to continue from last week's material, yeah. So we are going to talk about financial mathematics. Okay, so students, before we start with the lecture, I would like to remind you that the seventh meeting for our course will be on March 31st, yeah. So please make sure that you are there in the campus on March 31st. Okay, so and then after that we will start the exam week, yeah, from 1st to 14th of April. So students, today we are going to discuss about financial mathematics, yeah, as a continuation from last week's material. So if you have any question or if you have any problem in either seeing the material there or there's problem with you with the PPT, please tell me, yeah. And please do not hesitate to ask anytime if you are confused, yeah, or have some question about the material anytime, yeah. You can just ask me either by voice or by chat. Okay, so students, today we are going to discuss about the financial mathematics, yeah. So these are the outlines, yeah. So today we are going to calculate incremental payments, annual percentage rates, and return on investment. And then return on investment, yeah, in terms of risk will be also discussed, and then the return and risk will be also discussed on the seventh week. So today we are going to talk about this, yeah, incremental payments, yeah, as the first topic. So basically, in savings, sometimes we have some we our saving is not something that permanent, yeah. So sometimes we have initial value and then we add or subtract from that value. Yeah, while in the same time we get some interest from our saving. So something like that. Sometimes we add something, or sometimes we subtract something. So our saving is basically stocks, yeah, something that can increase or decrease along the time, yeah, based on our behavior. Either we add something or we subtract something from our saving. So this we can see the amount of saving that we have after a certain period, yeah, by using this formula. So basically, the amount of our saving at the end of certain years can be counted by using the initial value, uh, the number of years, the interest rate, and also the amount of addition or withdrawal uh, uh, at the end of each year. So you can use this formula. Let's say the application of this formula. So for example, a saving scheme involves an initial investment of $100 and additional 50 at the end of each year for the next 3 years. So you can see that here, yeah, annual is 100. Yeah, and then X is 50. And then the years is 3. So T equals 3. And here the interest rates is 10%. So R is 10. So using this formula, we can count the amount of saving that we have by the end of year 3. So in sorry students, 100, yeah, times in bracket 1 plus 10 divided by 100 power of 3. And then 50 times 1 plus 10 divided by 100 by the power of 3 minus X divided by minus 10, 50 divided by 10 per 100. Yeah, so you can see here the calculation. So after year 3, we will have $298.60. So this is payments, incremental payments. The example of incremental payments in saving. On the other way around, we can also use the same formula for subtraction. We will see the example later on. Okay, so let's see another example here. Yeah, so here we can see the another example of calculation. Yeah, in example 1, that the amount in two parts. Yeah, first we have the initial sum 100 and the value of the end of year 1, 110 times 1.1. It means that 1 is the initial plus interest of 10%, and then plus another addition to the saving, which is 50. So at the end of year 1, we will have 160. And then value at the end of year 2 will be 176. And then increment of 50 will be 226. And then value at the end of year 3, 248.6 plus addition of 50. So the value at the end of year 3 is 298.6. So if the interest rate or the amount added at the end of the year changes from year to year, so then this formula is no longer valid. Yeah. But we can use this for withdrawals, yeah. For example, for permanent withdrawals, yeah, or withdrawals with the same amount for each period. Yeah. So, but the increase will be negative. So, based on this formula, rather than having plus in the X, we will use minus. Okay. So, let's see the example here. So, for example, at the end of the year, each year, you will withdraw $600. So, and you will withdraw $600 every year for 5 years. So the initial investment is 30,000 and the interest rate is 8%. So here you will see that X is minus 600. So by using the same formula, annual, the initial value 30,000, and interest rate of 8, times in bracket 1 plus 8 divided by 100 with the power of 5, T equals to 5, so with the power of 5 plus, remember that it's a withdrawal, so X will be negative. Negative 600 times in bracket 1 plus 8 divided by 100 with the power of 5 minus, remember minus X, but because X is already minus, so it will be plus, plus 600. So then you will get here, for 3,559.88. So that. Next, then we can also use incremental payment for sinking funds. So sinking funds means that a business can set aside a fixed amount of money periodically, to get to a certain amount in the future. This amount is known as sinking fund. So sometimes we do this, so to anticipate future investment needs, such as, for example, we have machineries and the machine be will be out of service in certain time in the year, in the future. So then we will set a certain amount of money to make sure that by the end of the service of the machine, we have enough money to buy a new one. In reality, we do this in our daily life. So for example, if you have a gadget, for example, let's say a computer that can be used at least for example, 5 years, then every year you will set aside a certain amount of money, in the bank account. So by the end of year 5, when your computer is no longer can be used, you have enough money to buy a new computer. So that's an example. So let's see the example of sinking fund. The question is, how much should we set aside, at the end of each year for the next 5 years to accumulate 20,000 with interest rate of 10%. So then you have S, because that's the end amount, 20%. And then initial investment will be 0. 0. Then R equals to 12, and T is 5. So then what we need is to calculate the X, because that's the one that we need to set aside in order to reach 20,000 by the end of year 5. So then by using the formula, the same formula, we can use this, and then insert all the numbers there, and then the result is 3,157.89. $3,157.89. So it means that each year we have to set aside this amount of money in order to get 20,000 by the end of year 5. Of course, it's not going to be just like 20,000 by the end of year 5, then for 4,000 per year. Yes, it's true, but the thing is we have interest. So the money that we get from interest should be counted as well. So with interest, we don't have to set aside 4,000 per year, but only $3,157 $89 because of the interest. So another use for incremental payments is to count annuity. Yeah. So an annuity is arrangement which a fixed amount is paid in exchange for a fixed amount to be received at specified intervals for a specific period. Yeah. So for example, you set aside a certain amount of money for retirement, for example, something like that. So basically, yeah, if you have a retirement, let's say there's a retirement plan in the company that you work, yeah, such as also at IPB. So then you have to set aside a certain amount of your salary to be accumulated, then given to you after you retire. Yeah, the payment of the retirement payment, it can be in one big payment, yeah, or in a certain period of time. Yeah, sometimes some companies will give it in the whole amount at the end of the working years or at the retirement. Yes, but sometimes you can also get a certain amount of money every month until you die. Even even sometimes, yeah, sometimes after certain period after you die, and the beneficiaries of your retirement fund can be either your spouse or your um, uh, children. Yeah, so this is an example of annuities. Yeah, so let's see. The example here, what value would be required for an annuity of $1,000 received over the next 5 years and paid at the end of each year with an interest rate of 11% per year. So the investment final value is 0. X is 1,000, negative increment. R is 11% and T is 5 years. Yeah. So find the annual, the initial value, because this is what they ask. Yeah, what value would be required, for an annuity? Value would be required. Yeah, so it's the annual. Of 1,000, yeah, received over the next 5 years, it means that it's negative 1,000. Yeah, and the investment final value will be 0. Why? Because the money is gone. Yeah, it's already gone. Yeah, so then the question is the initial payment. Yeah, so here just use the same formula here, and then you will get the value of the annuity, $3,695.89. So it means that at the end of at the beginning of the retirement, you have to collect this amount of money, where with this amount of money you will get $1,000 for the next 5 years. So that's an example of that. So we can calculate the value of the annuity by discounting each 1,000, yeah, because that's the one that you will get, yeah, every year for the next 5 years, yeah, by present value. Yeah. So then another way, another application of incremental payment is mortgage. Yeah, mortgage is an agreement to make regular payment to purchase something, usually big ticket items. Yeah, so for example, a home, a vehicle, something like that. Yeah, so At the end of the repayment period, the debt is zero, yeah, because you already paid everything. So that's mortgage, yeah. So what annual payment? Usually mortgage can be paid, yeah, either monthly or yearly. In Indonesia, it's common to pay it in a monthly, yeah. So after you get the yearly payment and the payment that you have to do, yeah, to give to the lender, and then it will divide it by 12. Yeah, so something like that. So the question is, what annual payment at the end of the year is required to repay 25,000 mortgage over 25 years if the annual interest rate is 14%? So the final value is zero. Why? Because at the end of 25 years, there's no debt. Yeah. So your debt is already paid, so that no more debt. Yeah. So the final value will be zero. And the initial value is negative saving. Yeah, why? Because that's your debt. Yeah, the value of your debt. Yeah. So the initial value is minus 25,000. And R is 14% and T is 25 years. Yeah. So using the same formula, then you can calculate the annual payment. So please be careful here because it means that in annual payment, yeah, by the end of the years, so for example, like this. So if you buy a house, yeah, if you buy it with full payment at the beginning, yeah, or hard cash. Sometimes people call it hard cash or cash keras, yeah. It means that you don't owe anything, yeah. So basically, the amount of payment that you have to make, you pay it at the same right away, yeah, at the beginning. So you don't have any debt. But sometimes, yeah, um, the value of a house, for example, is just too high, yeah, for people to pay in one payment, yeah, at the beginning. So that's why sometimes you have to do this, yeah. So if you pay, for example, a house, yeah, with one payment at the beginning, maybe the value, yeah, the amount of money that you have to pay is the same with the price of the house. For example, the price of a house is 500 million. Then if you pay in front, then you only pay for 500 million. But if you will pay this 500 million over the next 20 years, for example, the total that you have paid after 20 years will not be the same as 500 million. Yeah, it will be more, of course. Yeah, why? Because there's an interest rate. So 14% is a common interest rate for housing. Yeah, so usually in Indonesia, housing interest is between 11 to 14%. Sometimes there's a scheme. Yeah, for example, for the first year you get 14%. 11%, and then for the first 5 years, 11%. The next 5 years, for example, 13%, and the last the next 5 year, 11% and 12% for the next 5 year. The next 5 year will be 13%, and the next 5 years will be 14%. Sometimes there's schemes like that. So it is that scheme need to be considered. Yeah. So if you have, for example, plan to buy a house with mortgage, you have to calculate everything. Yeah, sometimes there's also possibility of different interest rate for different time, different period. Sometimes it's possible as well. Yeah, so then you have to really consider that. Yeah, and then sometimes you can also consider the schemes offered by payment institutions such as banks, for example. And then sometimes you can also consider to just borrow money from people who will not charge you interest, like from your relatives, for example. But of course, you cannot borrow uh, a, a lot amount of money from one source, and you have to pay in a very really quick. So you cannot just borrow, for example, 500 million from your parents, and then you will pay it for 20 years. Yeah, maybe your parents are not alive after that. Yeah. So sometimes, yeah, the another trick is to just borrow from several relatives with small amount. Yeah, small amount each, but you have to pay them as quickly as possible. So, for example, you have to pay them at least in 2 or 3 years. Yeah, otherwise, then you will lose the relationship. Yeah. So, this is something that really have a real life implication. So mortgage. Yeah. So in other scheme, for example, if there's the first 5 years, the interest will be 11, and then the next will be 12, and so on and so forth. Then you have to be uh, really doing the calculation multiple times. Yeah. So for the first 5 year, and then the next for the next uh, uh, 5 years, and the next 5 years, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So that's mortgage. So next, we will discuss about annual percentage rate. Yeah. So annual percentage rate is actual percentage rate. Sometimes because rate can be counted in a year or in a month. Yeah. So the annual percentage rates represent the actual cost of borrowing over 1 year when with compound interest, usually monthly, is taking into account. Yeah? So you can use this formula at the end of 1 year. Yeah. So here 80 is the value, yeah, after certain year, annual the initial value, and R interest rate, and M is the monthly rate. Yeah. The amount of money. Yeah. So let's say, for example, something like this: a credit card system charges 3% per month. Yeah, for outstanding balance. Yeah. So for example, if you use credit cards, yeah, so basically in credit cards, yeah, uh, you are borrowing money without interest if you pay right away. So for example, if you have credit card, yeah, so you can, let's say, you charge on your credit card 5 million, yeah, for this month, yeah, the month of March. So by the end of March, you have to pay 5 million. If you pay the full amount, then you will not get any interest. But if you can only pay, for example, 3 million, then the outstanding balance, yeah, which is 2 million, will be charged with interest. Yeah. So then you have to pay interest on the 2 million. So this is also something that you need to consider. Yeah. So having a credit card means that you have to um, pay the exact amount, yeah, of the charges, yeah, uh, to hinder yourself from uh, taken into interest. Yeah, you have to pay interest. So this is also the same principle with pay later. Yeah, so any kind of pay later, you in Indonesia we have Shopee Pay Later, GoPay Later, and many types of pay later. Yeah, so this pay later will charge certain percentage, yeah, charge interest of certain percentage for each month, not yearly. Yeah. So this is the example. Yeah, how much will be owed at the end of 1 year if 1,000 has been borrowed and no payments have been made. Yeah, so you charge $1,000 and you don't pay anything. It means that the outstanding balance will be 1,000. So if we just simply multiplying the 3% monthly rate by 12, yeah, 12 month, gives a nominal interest of 36%. Yeah, this figure is an underestimate. Yeah, because then you have more outstanding balance every month. Yeah, so it's charged monthly. So it's not going to be 36% at the end of the year. It will be more. So let's see the calculation. Yeah. So let's see the outstanding balance will be 1,000 because there's no payment. Yeah. So the payment is 0, then the outstanding balance is still 1,000. Yeah. So and then 1 plus 3% with the power of 12. Yeah. So 12 means the amount of month in a year. Yeah, this in this case we just calculate in a year. Yeah, so let's say the interest paid, yeah, is this amount. So you have to pay $1,425, 76 cents. Then the interest will be that amount minus the initial. Yeah, so the interest will be $125.76. Yeah, so if we just calculate by 36, yeah, so then the interest will be only 36%. Yeah, but let's see. The total interest is not 36% in this case. Yeah, it's 42.58%. Yeah, so it's even higher than the just simply multiplying 3% times 12. So that's why it is also something that you need to consider when you have this, let's say, uh, credit charge system, yeah, either with card or with pay later. Okay, so next. So then we can see here the M is the number of payment period, yeah, in a year is 12, and R is the monthly interest rate. The total interest paid is given by this formula. Yeah, and then we can compare the two. Yeah, let's say another example. If the monthly interest is 1.5%, what is the nominal annual rate, yeah, or the APR? So the nominal annual rate, yeah, if we just simply calculate it with 12, it will be 18%. Yeah, but the APR, yeah, using this formula, then you will find that it is 19.56%. So annual percentage rates, if the interest is given monthly, will be different from just simply multiplying the monthly interest rate with 12. Yeah. So that's the another example. Okay, so another example. Yeah, if the nominal interest rate is 30% per year, but the interest is compounded monthly, what is the APR? Yeah, so nominal monthly rate 30% divided by 12, 2.5%. Yeah, and then the annual percentage rate, yeah, will be using the same formula here, using this formula, and then you will get 34.49%. So it's that. So it means that the annual percentage rate, if the interest is charged monthly, will be higher. So then, if you have, for example, consider a certain credit, then you can use this in your real life, for example, if the interest will be paid monthly or yearly, so different scheme will cost you differently. So you can use this formula to really calculate, and consider the credit scheme that more suitable for you. Okay, let's see another example. What monthly payment is required to pay off 30,000 mortgage for 25 years with APR of 13%? Yeah. So it means that the um, the interest will be charged monthly. So then we can calculate this. To find the monthly rate. So monthly rate, or the interest rate for each month. We can use this formula. The same formula as before, this one. And then after that, we know that the annual percentage rate is 13,000. And then with this, we can calculate the monthly interest. So based on this calculation, we find that the monthly interest is 1.024%. And then to calculate monthly payment or X, let's see. For example, here the debt is 30,000. It means that the initial will be minus 30,000 because that's your debt. And then at the end of the mortgage, the debt will be 0. So as the end value will be 0. With monthly interest of 1.024% and times, please remember that the T, because it's charged monthly, then the T will not be just 25, but 25 times 12, which is 300. So then, based on this, you can calculate with this formula. This one, this the first formula, and then you can calculate the monthly payment. So, 30,000 times, so remember that the interest rate will be 1.024%. So at that, and then the power will be 300, because it paid monthly rather than yearly. And then you will get that the monthly payment will be $322.37. Let's see with the same here. So you will see that the annual one, 3,637.50. And then the monthly one, if it's charged monthly, and 322.37. So it means that you need to understand this. So in a real life decision, you have to consider this scheme as well. Sometimes students, when you decide to buy big ticket items such as a house, for example, or a vehicle, let's say a car, so you will have this many schemes, either that you pay the interest yearly or monthly, that the interest will be charged yearly or monthly, or the interest will be the same after certain for the period of the debt, or will it be different? So you need to understand that, because sometimes there's also scheme that give a different interest rate for different time period. For example, something like that. So this is a real life. You can have this calculation in the really real life setting. Yeah, you will find this calculation as a part of your consideration or a part of your decision making. So that okay. So students, any questions so far? Good. Okay, so next we will discuss about return and risk. So if we want to invest in something, we also consider risk. Yeah. Uh, then statistics will help us. Statistics and mathematical calculation will help us to make decision uh, in line with the efficiency and risk. Yeah. So the purpose of measuring investment return is to determine the economic efficiency of an investment. What is efficiency? Efficiency is always talk about input per output per input. So output per input. It means that if we talk about economic efficiency, is the benefit divided by cost. Either way. So for example, if we invest on something, then the cost will be the investment. While if we invest on something, we will get benefit as well. So we have to consider these two. So that's why we call it economic efficiency of an investment. Because there's a cost of investment. So we set aside a certain amount of money to invest in something. But with that investment, we expect return, output. So the benefit is the output and the input is the cost. If we talk about efficiency, it's always output per input. Benefit divided by cost. So investment return indicate the profit generated by initial outlay relative to the amount of outlay. So input, output, output per input. To measure efficiency, basically it's just the output of investment relative to the input. It's always like that. So student, please remember this. As a business student, you have to understand the difference between efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency, effectiveness, and efficacy. If something is efficient, it means that the amount of output per input is high. It means that the amount of output is surpassing the input. That's efficient. The amount of benefit is surpassing the cost. That's what we call efficient. Effective is about reaching what we want to achieve. So effectiveness is the measure of whether we reach or do not reach what we want to achieve, reaching our goals. Sometimes we can reach our goals effectively. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we can be efficient but not reaching our goals as expected. So the interplay of these two will be a consideration for many business decisions, including something of yourself, for example. Let's say, so for example, if you want to finish your study fast, and then what you can do is you can just take as many as credits as possible. But of course, in this universities cannot be because there's upper and lower limit, for taking for amount of credits taken each semester. But sometimes in certain university you can do that. So what you can do is just just take the as many as possible um, credit, yeah, each semester. But sometimes, yeah, but in other way, you have to have good grade. Yeah. So efficient means that you just take as much credit as possible, as much as credit, yeah, every semester. Yeah. But you have goals, right? You have goals. Your goals is to get good grade. Yeah. That's effectiveness, yeah, reaching your goal. Yeah, effectiveness, reaching your goals to get good grade. If we talk about efficiency, means taking as much as credit as possible per semester. Yeah, so if you take, let's say, 35 credits per semester, you will finish fast because the total credit taken is for 145. Yeah, but there's always an interplay of this. Yeah, there's always a trade-off. Yeah, if you take too many credits per semester and you cannot manage that, what will the impact will be your grade. Huh? So you cannot get good grade. Yeah, that's the point. While if you just take the minimal credits, yeah, or as minimal as possible amount of credit each semester, then you maybe get good grade because you don't have too many credits each semester. So the delicate balance of or the interplay or the balance between being effective and efficient is something that you even see every day. And that's an example of being effective and efficient. Um, so here, if we talk about investment, yeah, what we talk about here in investment efficiency. Okay, so let's say to determine the economic efficiency of an investment, we can use the return on investment. Yeah, so basically, yeah, after a certain period, yeah, and then we can have certain profits. Yeah, so uh, this is the formula that we can use. Yeah, let's see an example. A $100 investment that earns $20 profit each year for 3 years will have a holding period return of 0.60 determined as follows. Yeah, so it's something like this. It means that you have profit 20 per year. Yeah, year 1 20, year 2 20, and year 3 20. So that's your profit. Yeah, and then divided by 100. So the return on investment will be 60 per 100 or 60%. So that's just an example of a simple understanding of return on investment. So to count return on investment, we can use arithmetic return on investment and geometric return on investment. Yeah, we will compare both. Yeah. We can use arithmetic mean return on investment or ROI A. Yeah, by dividing the holding period return or ROI age by the investment duration expectancy. So this is the formula. So ROI A equals to ROI age, this one, the formula, divided by N, investment duration. Okay, so sometimes if it's not clear what the exact return on investment will be in a given year, we can calculate the return based on periodic cash flow. Yeah. Therefore, where P null is the initial investment, the arithmetic mean return on investment or AOI formula will be something like this. Yeah, ROI A formula will be this. Yeah. So let's see an application of this. Yeah, example of this. Yeah, let's say a stock that was acquired for $100. Yeah, so you buy a stock, yeah, for $100 3 years ago. With dividend, the payment, yeah, of $10 per year for 3 years, and then after 3 years you sell that investment, that stock for 130. So then what is the return on investment? That's the question. Yeah. So T0 is the date of the stock was purchased, yeah, when the stock was purchased. The arithmetic mean of annual return on investment, yeah, ROIA, will be this. Yeah. So then you have 10% for $10 for 3 years. Yeah. So the initial investment is 100 minus 100 plus the profit, yeah, 10 plus 10 plus 10. And at the end of 3 years, you can get 130, yeah, by selling the stock. Yeah, plus 130 divided by 3 times 100. So then the ROIA is 20%. Yeah. So the arithmetic mean annual return on investment can be expressed in this formula. So you have the dividend divided by n times P0 plus Pn minus P0 divided by n times P0. Yeah. Div is the dividend at the time t. So if it's 3 years, then you have to add three dividend. Yeah. And then P0 is the initial price. Yeah. Pn is the selling price. And then Pn minus Po is the capital gain from the sale of the stock. So basically, you add the dividend and you add the capital gain by selling the stock. So that's the thing. Let's say there's another stock acquired with $100 and held on the same period 3 years. Yeah. If this stock has no dividend and sold for 160, then the annual return will be, so the dividend will be 0, but you will get capital gain, 160 minus 100 divided by 3 times P0, 3 times 100. Yeah, so the ROIA will be 20%. In this case, stock A and stock B, the return on investment of stock A, this one, and stock B will be the same. Okay, so the application of return on investment means that how we can use the price and dividend data on of an investment to calculate the return. Suppose we consider to obtain a publicly traded investment with the price and dividend data are publicly accessible. So with the price and yield data or dividend data of that investment, we can calculate the periodic return using this formula. So sometimes students, if let's say you consider to obtain a stock, for example, a publicly traded investment, let's say a stock, then you need to also find the data related to that. Of course, this is just a simple calculation on return on investment. But sometimes it's not always as simple as this. But this is at least have some kind of calculation based decision making. Yeah, but sometimes the price of the stock is not only the return on investment sometimes is not only just influenced by the selling price, the initial price, or the dividend. Sometimes it also influenced by other factors. But this is a good starting point to consider to making a decision based on numerical consideration, yeah, based on calculation. So using this formula, let's say we calculate the monthly return of an investment for 5 months. Yeah. So let's say, for example, here in June you have 50, in July you have 55. Yeah. In August you have 50, in September you have 54, in October you have 47, and November you have 51. Yeah. So then let's see the dividend. Yeah. So there's zero dividend from June to September, and then in October you have 2, and then zero again in November. Yeah. So then you calculate the rate, the return on investment. Yeah. So by using the formula. Yeah. Yeah. So here in the first month, yeah, from June to July, get 55 minus 50, yeah, divided by 50, yeah, 10%. And then August, yeah, 50 minus 55, yeah, divided by 55 minus 0.091. Yeah. In September, 54 minus 50 divided by 50, 0.08. Yeah. And then in October, 54 minus 47 divided by 54 minus 0.092. Yeah. And then in November, you have 47. 51 minus 47 divided by 47, 0.081. Yeah. So here, in October, you also have dividend. Yeah, so you have to consider that as well. So 47 plus the dividend of 2, yeah, divided by 54. Yeah, so minus 0.092. So the 5-month holding period return, yeah, so here it means that you just add all the return. Yeah, so 0.01 minus 0.0 0.1 minus 0.091 plus 0.08 minus 0.092 plus 0.081. Yeah, so you will get 0.078. Yeah, so in 5 months, the return on investment is 7.8%. Yeah, so the arithmetic mean of return, yeah, will be the mean of all of that. Yeah, so then divided by 5, yeah, 0.0156. So then you have another way to calculate return on investment. Yeah, the arithmetic mean return on investment does not account the differences between dividends, intermediate cash flow, and capital gains, profit at the end of holding period. It means that the arithmetic mean return on investment does not account for the time value of money or the ability to reinvest cash flow received before the end of investment holding period. It means that, so for example, something like this. Yeah. So, for example, you have $100, yeah, and then you have the dividend, for example, 10. Yeah. This 110 can be reinvest, yeah, rather than taking that 10. You can reinvest the 110, the whole amount that you have. Yeah. So then you need to calculate with another way. Yeah. Geometric mean return on investment. Yeah. So when any earnings retained, yeah, are automatically reinvested. Yeah, the formula is here. Yeah, here P is profit. Yeah, so the geometric return on investment. Yeah, and the formula is geometric return on investment equals to uh, root with the power of n. Yeah, root n of profit. Yeah, times 1 plus the interest, yeah, minus 1. Okay, let's see. Yeah, $100 investment that yields, yeah, 20 dollars per year for 3 years will have return on investment of 20% in 3 years. Yeah, the geometric mean of return on this investment, yeah, is this. Yeah, so then you can do the calculation there, yeah, and then you will have 0.2. Yeah. Okay. So let's say there is another stock acquired with 100,000 but has no dividend and sold for 160 after 3 years. Yeah. And then we can calculate the geometric return. Yeah. So something like this. Then the geometric return on investment will be 0.0696. Yeah. So it's that. So let's see. We have calculated this one, yeah, previously. Yeah. So previously with arithmetic return on investment, yeah, the first and the second stock, yeah, the calculation, yeah, the return on investment is equal, yeah, 0.2 or 20%. While with geometric return on investment, yeah, the result is different. Yeah, this one is the same 0.2, while the second stock is different. Yeah, with arithmetic calculation you will get 0.2, while with geometric calculation you will get 0.16. Yeah, 96. Yeah, around 17%. Yeah, so see, there's a difference. Yeah, so let's see the application. Let's see, we compare Fund A and Fund B. Yeah, so this is Fund A and Fund B. Yeah, so you have Fund A and Fund B. Fund A is the same as the previous one. Yeah, so then you have this, yeah, 50 in by the end of June, 55 by the end of July, 50 by the end of August, 54 by the end of September, 47 by the end of October with dividend of 2, yeah, and then 51 by the end of November. Yeah, and then you have Fund B, yeah, with the same time period, 50 by the end of June, 80 by the end of July, 40 by the end of August, 60 by the end of September, yeah, and then 30 by the end of October, and 45 by the end of November, without any dividend. So you can see here, these two, yeah, just with naked eyes, yeah, we can see that Fund A and Fund B. Let's see the final, yeah. So in Fund A, 50 and 51. Yeah, in Fund B, 50 and 45. It means that after 5 years, 5 months, yeah, Fund A still have something, while Fund B is losing money, yeah, basically losing money. Let's say, if we count with arithmetic return on investment, the results are misleading. Yeah, so we can see that basically in Fund B, you will see that there's loss, yeah, at the end of June 50, but at the end of November, 45, you lose $5. Okay. Yeah. The arithmetic means rate of return, yeah, with the same calculation here, you can see the calculation there. If we use arithmetic means of return, yeah, return on investment, yeah, you can see that the calculation of Fund B, the rate of return is 12% over 5 months. Yeah, while C in Fund A is just 1.56%. Yeah, so here if we just see this, yeah, with naked eyes, yeah, without calculation, it's clear Fund A outperform Fund B. Yeah, why? Because you have 50 in the beginning and 51 at the end. While Fund B, 50 in the beginning, 45 in the end. It's clear. Yeah? Fund A will yield more than Fund B. But why the rate is different? Yeah? The arithmetic mean of return on investment, yeah, in Fund A appears lower than Fund B, even though Fund B clearly lost money. Yeah. So, and then what can we do? Then we can, yeah, use this, yeah, calculation, or we can use the geometric mean rate of return. Yeah. So let's say if we use the geometric rate of return, yeah, so there we can see that there's a difference. Yeah. So it's clear that the return on investment, geometric return on investment of Fund B will be minus. It's clear. Or if we can use this formula, yeah, the arithmetic return on investment with this formula, yeah, we can see also minus. So, but it's more accurate using the geometric return on investment. Yeah, you can see that it's clear. Yeah, if you lose money, then the rate will be minus. So it's clear with this calculation, geometric return on investment, with this geometric return on investment calculation, Fund A outperform Fund B. Yeah, so it's clear. Okay, so that's it, students. Any question? Okay, any questions, students? Is it clear?
For me, it's clear, Miss. Thank you so much,
Clear,
Miss.
Miss.
Okay, so before we end the class, yeah, please open the camera and we shall take picture. Now, please prepare yourself and open the camera. You can take a picture also in the, on your side, yeah. Okay, please open your camera. Okay, Miss Maitza, Mr. Aldra, Mr. Liangkun, Mr. Faiz, Miss Kotru. Okay, Mr. Liangkun and Mr. Faiz, are you there? Okay, Mr. Faiz, Mr. Liangkun, please open your camera. Okay, students. And okay, we shall take pictures. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's it, students. There's no assignment for this week. Yeah. But please study, yeah, because the test is coming. Yeah. So please remember that. Okay. Our last session before the midterm test will be on the 31st of March, yeah, after the Eid holiday. Yeah, it's scheduled as luring, yeah, or in class in the classroom. So please make sure that you are there. And we will have the test, midterm test week, starting from the 1st up to the 14th of April. So please prepare yourself for the midterm test. Yeah, the midterm test for this class will be essay, all essay on paper. So then you need to prepare yourself. You can bring calculator, and also of course stationaries. Yeah. So please prepare yourself for the test. Yeah. The test will be essay. Yeah, essay only. Maybe with some true or false, but mostly no. Yeah, mostly just essay. Year by year. So usually it's that they are easy. So please prepare yourself. Yeah. So the problems will be similar with the example problems and also problems that you find in the book. Yeah. So you have 4 books. Yeah. Each chapter will have certain reference on certain books. Yeah. So please find that reference and look at the example of exercises in the book. Yeah, usually we find the problems for the test will either similar to the example that we give in the lecture or similar to the one in the book. Yeah, so just please learn about this. Yeah, so of course you if you do your assignments every week, yeah, you also do some exercises, yeah, to prepare yourself for the test. Yeah, so okay, students, thank you for coming and see you next time. Have a nice day. You may leave the Zoom.
Thank you, Miss.
Thank you,
You're
Miss.
welcome.
Thank you, Miss.
You're welcome.